Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Commonwealth Games Culture and Physical Activity Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'll go straight onto the agenda, starting off with agenda item 1, which is just the notice of recording. Just to let members of the meeting know that this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press or public may record or take any photographs except where there are any confidential or exempt items. And then item 2, apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Ron Storer. Do we have any other apologies?
None received, Chair.
No. None. Okay. Item 3, any declarations of interest? None. Okay. So it would have been item 4, but we'll change the running order. So we'll take item 4 after item 5, and we'll go straight to inclusive growth. And I believe we've got Ian McLeod and Rebecca Farr in attendance to present this item. So I'll hand over to you guys. And like always, members are just requested to do a show of hands to let me know if you've got any questions, and we'll take the questions at the end of this item. Oh, 1 second. I can see Kerry's typing, and Kevin, you've just been able to join the meeting. Just yes, in your absence, we decided to swap the order around, but
That's absolutely fine, Councillor. My apologies, but I have it in my diaries face to face, so I went to the BMI main hall.
Oh, apologies.
So my apologies, it's our error, but that's where I've been. So I'm quite happy to drop down the agenda.
Okay, if that's, I mean, as long as that's okay with you, because we did say that we'd go ahead, but are you only, just for clarification purposes, you can stay till 2:30, is that correct?
Yes, I'll be fine.
Okay, well,
I may do a few emails while listening to others, but I'll be fine.
Okay, that's fine. In that case, we'll continue. Thank you, Kevin. We'll continue with what we agreed then. So I'll hand over to Ian and Rebecca to do their presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Carney. Good afternoon, everybody. So Becky's got a presentation that she'll run through in a few minutes. Obviously, the Commonwealth Games is a major opportunity for the city, and we've been seeking to maximise that now with a number of key development schemes and public realm improvements which are taking place across Birmingham. Obviously, we've been leading on the transformation of Perry Barr. The main focus was clearly on the athletes' village there, but we've adapted that development now to make sure we still deliver the legacy benefits to the city, which would have come from that scheme in any case. So we've got nearly 1,000 houses under construction there, with significant potential in phase 2. We have planning consent for another 600 homes, and further potential beyond that for up to 5,000 in the wider area. And Becky will talk you through that in a lot of more detail. We put a master plan in place to really seek to maximise the opportunity, show how Perry Barr and the development there will link up with the stadium, and the wider opportunities around that as to how we can improve Perry Park on the back of the new Alexander Stadium as well. So that's obviously been a key theme for the Directorate now over the last 4 years since we were awarded the Games. More recently, we've adapted the Smithfield development to accommodate the Commonwealth Games and act as a venue for the Games itself. The demolition of that site is underway, and we'll be in a good position there to hand that site over to the OC within the required timeframes. The site will then come back and really lead on one of the biggest transformations then within the city overall. A number of other public realm schemes underway, which Becky will touch on. So I will pause there, hand you over to Becky, who will take you through the presentation. Both Becky and myself will be happy to take questions at the end. So Becky, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Kerry, did you say you're okay to share the presentation?
Yes, I'll do that for you now, Becky.
Fabulous, thank you very much. I'm really pleased, actually, just sort of while that comes up, to have the opportunity to come and present here, because I've been involved in the Games right from the very outset when we were looking at bidding for 2026. And right from that point, when we first started talking about the Commonwealth Games, the really important point was, what is the benefit for Birmingham and what can we deliver as a result of this? What does this unlock for Birmingham? And I think what I'm going to talk through now is some really great examples of that. And I'll elaborate on things that Ian's mentioned, pick up a couple of other things as well. And as Ian said, we'll pick up some questions at the end. So one of the really big opportunities from the games has been the opportunity to accelerate and increase the scope of things we were already wanting to do. Some things which were already planned in detail, some which were aspirational, but we've been able to bring those forward, particularly around transport projects, for example. We've secured a lot of funding for regeneration projects off the back of the Commonwealth Games. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the funding opportunities we've been able to capitalise upon. I'll talk about the residential scheme, as Ian mentioned, Perry Barr 2040 public realm, and also some of the other benefits that perhaps we didn't initially identify, but have been a spin-off from what we've been working on. So next slide, please, Carrie. The Perry Barr regeneration scheme and the residential development there. When we started looking at the opportunity for the Athletes Village, we worked to assemble 27 hectares of brownfield land in the town centre and around the former BCU campus at Perry Barr, which has facilitated both the residential development and the associated improvements ahead of the games. So this enabled us to acquire sites that were derelict or in poor condition or due to become vacant, like the BCU campus, and also land to facilitate transport improvements. And to do that on a much bigger scale than we would otherwise have been able to do, in part because we were able to access funding from the combined authority and from central government off the back of the Games opportunity. We secured consent for around 2,000 new homes, 1,414 on the phase 1 site, which is on site currently. We've got 968 homes on site, of which around 400 are affordable homes, creating a significant new green space and improved walking links. And we've got around the opportunity for around 500 further homes on the phase 2 site, which currently has an outline consent, and as part of the master plan that we're working on currently, we're looking to revise and enhance that, not necessarily in terms of numbers, but in terms of the wider offer. There's also an opportunity around Birchfield Gateway, where we've assembled 3 corners of the sites around the island, which present an opportunity for town centre uses and around 400 more homes. We've also identified wider sites in the area alongside the ones I've already mentioned. That means some 5,000 new homes will be developed within, I suppose, what we could describe as walking distance of Perry Barr town centre over the next 20 years. And importantly, this amounts to roughly 10% of the number of new homes identified in the Birmingham Development Plan as to be delivered within the plan period. And that's a far greater number than we could have achieved in this part of the city without the investment that we've secured off the back of the Games. Also notable that we worked with DFE to ensure that the planned school for the area was located on a really appropriate site, had new investment into the building, and that school opened in September and has been very successful. And if anyone does have the opportunity to have a visit, the Prince Albert Community Trust School there on Holford Drive is really an exceptional building. Actually, it made me want to go back to school when I visited. As well as the sort of physical outputs, there's been significant social value outputs from the scheme. 73% of the workforce is local employment, so people within 30 miles. Over £180 million spent within 30 miles, 321 jobs created, 60 apprenticeships, and a significant amount of the waste from the site diverted from landfill. If we move on to the next slide, we'll talk a little about some of the projects that are on site in Perry Barr at the moment. Starting with the highway scheme. So for a long time, BCC and partners had recognised the limitations of the highway infrastructure at Perry Barr, and with the opportunity to opportunity to access more funding, we've been able to realign the highway and unlock a development site which now has consent for more than 200 homes, to provide public transport corridors and active travel priority, and importantly to provide surface level crossings at Birchfield and Perry Barr, which will replace a walking journey that would previously have involved 2 subways and over 100 stairs. It's important for games time, and it's especially important for legacy. The new rail station, which without the games I think would have been far more minor improvements and would have been some way off in programme terms, is progressing really well on site. So the lift shafts are in place, making the station DDA compliant for the first time. An enhanced bus interchange is currently on site. That work's just started, and that will offer better games time and legacy accessibility, and reduce the interaction between vehicles and pedestrians in front of One Stop, creating a much more pedestrian friendly environment. The first route to the Sprint bus network are on site. That's been significantly accelerated to deliver ahead of the games, particularly along the A34 and the A45. And we've achieved some really positive efficiencies by integrating that with the highway works. Similarly with the cycle route, which is being extended from the previous flyover junction up to the stadium and then beyond. You'll be aware from previous presentations about the stadium and the both games time and legacy opportunity there. One of the really important points that Ian mentioned about what the stadium does is it creates an anchor for the community and for activity, and there's a great opportunity to improve the setting of the stadium to really activate Perry Park as well. But we're already looking at what happens next. In the run up to the games and onwards afterwards, we're looking to have a pop-up containerized, albeit temporary, facility on what I've described here on the presentation as plot 10. I realise that a plan would have been helpful, but it's the site between One Stop and the residential development, to provide a leisure, food and beverage and retail opportunity, and that's something we'd really like to get local businesses involved with. Procurement's currently underway on that, with selection of a developer due towards the end of October. If we move on to the next slide, I'll pick up on some other things looking forward. So the emerging Perry Barr 2040 master plan, we title it A Vision for Legacy. It sets out what will be achieved in Perry Barr over the next 2 decades. So building upon what's already happening and using the games as a catalyst rather than seeing these existing projects as an end in themselves. We just concluded 11 weeks of public consultation, which informs the master plan, and our intent is to bring that to Cabinet for adoption in December. Alongside that, there'll be a delivery plan, which will have actions for developing and funding projects and addressing programme governance, including integrating local engagement more fully into that. And then I've got a couple of slides here on some of the various projects which fit within the master plan. So Perry Park, I think I've probably covered the main points already, but making sure we have a successful stadium, that's absolutely vital. But actually, as part of a larger leisure and well-being attraction, with the park enhanced as well, and sitting at the heart of the community rather than being an elite facility. Perry Barr's a unique area really in terms of its natural environment assets. It's got canal, reservoir, river, and actually within the master plan area 5 allotment sites as well. So really integrating those assets into the environment of Perry Barr and providing opportunities for a range of different activities and events. Moving on to the next slide, we have I've already referred, of course, to the residential schemes on site, but there's other opportunities for new homes across the Perry Barr area, and the master plan will set out those opportunities and programme and delivery mechanisms or opportunities alongside that. We have a commitment to delivering 35% affordable housing, ensuring that we create mixed communities by providing housing for a range of different people, so different house types, different tenures, and as I say, around 5,000 total new homes across the area, and supporting that with high quality education facilities, health and wellbeing facilities, sports activities, retail services, etc. And as I mentioned previously, the importance of connectivity to green spaces, providing access to jobs, and making sure that it's somewhere that people are choosing to live and work. If we move on to the next slide. One of the key projects identified in the master plan is the reuse of the bus garage. So by looking at the existing consented scheme on our phase 2 site, which previously considered the demolition of the bus garage, we've actually managed to redesign that in such a way that we both retain housing numbers, but also enable the retention of the bus garage, which will be, or it is proposed will be refitted and enhanced to provide a mixed use destination that really activates the area and brings people in from a wider area to visit Perry Barr, as well as supporting residents. And that could include a whole range of uses: food and beverage, leisure, arts and culture, retail, community uses, small business space. We've had some really fantastic conversations with the wholesale markets about how they might want to link into this, and also with the combined authority and the circular economy team about how we can make this a place that really promotes sustainability. If we move on to the next slide, and this is also really about activating Perry Barr. The town centre at Perry Barr actually provides for a really quite a wide catchment, and has the opportunity to do something a lot more innovative and distinctive that can respond to how town centres are changing over time. So we actually asked the really difficult question of people of what should a town centre be, what should Perry Barr town centre be, and it was very clear that people want to see a wider range of uses, including leisure, community, increased levels of residential within the town centre. There's some real opportunities to open up the town centre to the natural environment. Many of you will know One Stop Shopping Centre. You may or may not be aware that if you go to the back of One Stop Shopping Centre, you can get into Perry Hall Park, which is a fantastic natural resource, but is very poorly accessible from that southern end of Perry Barr. So improving those links will be a really important element. We've already talked about all of the transport projects, but Perry Barr really becomes a hub for active travel and for interchange. And we're looking at initiatives to support new and existing businesses in Perry Barr to make sure that that town centre continues to thrive. If we move on to the next slide, thank you, Carrie. There's a couple of projects that are not necessarily area specific, but are or not site specific, but are area wide. We have a theme around connecting up a green network to support active and healthy lifestyle choices. So that's green spaces, active travel routes, healthy streets, and integrating existing initiatives, but in a joined up way. There's a proposal to develop a cultural strategy, and we've been working with some of the arts and culture organisations already working in Perry Barr, building on the really successful social value outputs that we've already seen delivered in Perry Barr on a single site. And my reference earlier was just to the Perry Barr residential scheme. There's similarly some fantastic outputs from the stadium and other sites. We want to ensure that we have a social value strategy for the whole of Perry Barr, so that any developer or scheme being delivered in Perry Barr is meeting, is providing high quality social value outputs in a coordinated way, such that the people of Perry Barr are best able to benefit. And importantly, this is a 20-year plan, so things will happen over time and there are opportunities for meanwhile uses, temporary uses, short-term changes, and some projects that will without doubt change before they are delivered over the 20-year period. So it's a live program of regeneration in Perry Barr. What I wanted to do now was pick up on some of the other projects or programs that we're involved in through inclusive growth that are either accelerated because of the games or are being delivered differently. So within the city centre, we've got the South Side public realm with improved pedestrian crossings, new public square outside the Hippodrome, and streetscape and environmental improvements, new tree planting, etc. within that area. That's also linked to projects around Digbeth. We've got projects happening at Victoria Square, where apart from replacing the temporary hostile vehicle mitigation, there's also enhancements to the public space, street lighting, improved wayfinding across the whole city centre, upgrading of street furniture, restoration of the fountain. That was a project working in conjunction with the Business Improvement District, the Commonwealth Business Improvement District, to deliver the Snow Hill Public Realm programme, with the first two projects there being around Cornwall Row and Livery Street, and also Cornwall Street. These are all things that will be delivered ahead of the games to ensure that we're presenting the best possible face to the global audience. But they're also things that we had planned, and we have been able to accelerate or draw additional funding in to support and enhance the scope of because of the games. I think my next slide picks up on a comment that Ian made around Smithfield. So Smithfield will be a games time venue and live site, 3x3 basketball and beach volleyball. There's a number of events before and following the games that are being hosted at the site as well, events, festivals, and that those are being facilitated by the inclusive growth team. And although Smithfield is a major development site, and that you can see on the slide here all of the fantastic things it's going to deliver, that leisure, culture, events offer is going to be absolutely central to the success of the Smithfield area. And what the games and other events that are happening in the short term enables us to do is to ensure that the future strategy for events in this area is designed to meet the needs and learns the most from what we're doing in the short term. There's a range of other projects and initiatives that I've picked up on the following slides, some of which I'll apologise. I had to call on colleagues to give me a bit more detail, so I may just need to read a few bits to out to you rather than perhaps speak as fluently as I've been trying to do. I've mentioned a couple of times meanwhile uses and activity. Activating space has been really important during the post-COVID kind of environment that we've been in, and getting people back out into the public realm and being able to enjoy things that perhaps we no longer want to do in enclosed public space, enclosed indoor spaces. So really maximising the use of outdoor space. And obviously this is something that's not just about inclusive growth. We're working with all sorts of other teams across the council to do. Transport projects. I've mentioned on here the University Station, the Sprint network, but actually also importantly has been some of the transport planning that's gone into the games, where inclusive growth has worked really closely with the organising committee and TFWM to make sure that where projects are put in place for the games, there's a real legacy opportunity. So whether that's around sustainable transport and active travel infrastructure, or also about real-time travel data management of congestion, and enabling the management of the network to be improved off the back of the games. We're also drawing out opportunities where we can build on projects that are being delivered for games time, non-transport projects, whether that's around city dressing or wayfinding, to ensure that where they have a legacy value, we're maximising that. Around inward investment, one of the big wins from hosting the games is the number of people who will have Birmingham in the front of their mind, and the spotlight that's really put on our city. We've developed a business and tourism programme, so that working closely with the growth company. There's a £24 million programme in place to maximise the economic benefits of the games for local residents and businesses. Although it's led by the growth company and the combined authority of the accountable body, BCC has had a significant role in this, and particularly inclusive growth. A couple of examples, we're doing some in-person and virtual meetings with some priority markets. We've got a visit from the Australian High Commission in a couple of weeks' time, but also with Canada, India, Malaysia, Singapore. There's international marketing and PR campaigns seeking to attract additional visitors to the city, of which a significant proportion will be international visitors, seeking to secure over 700 million of new overseas investment into the UK, of which more than half will be in the West Midlands, and creating around 7 million additional export deals for the region. Overall, this can generate around 53 million net GVA for the UK economy, of which about 3/4 is within the West Midlands, and sustain well over 1,000 additional jobs. There's also an element about which that enhanced perception of the UK just creates an ongoing positive opportunity for businesses, both with UK internal relationships within the UK for the West Midlands, but also looking internationally, and it opens up opportunities for government engagement as well. So in terms of other programmes, the Future Parks Accelerator programme has given us some opportunities to look at different models to involve community in the design and maintenance of new spaces. And this is something that has been supported by some of the Games Legacy and funding opportunities. We're within the East Birmingham Inclusive Growth team. We've been promoting Commonwealth Games Celebrating Communities grants by the members forum, but also continue to maximise the local benefits of the various games related programmes, and to make sure we align or work with members to align their bids and their interests with the delivery of the East Birmingham Inclusive Growth strategy. Ian, I don't know if you want to say a little more on the future city plan. I think you're probably closer to it than I am. Or I'm also happy to flick on to the next slide.
No, definitely happy to pick that up, Becky. So the Future City Plan is obviously building our vision for the city centre overall, and really trying to kick on with the momentum from the Commonwealth Games. So setting that out, get moving on from the big city plan that we adopted in 2010, and there's some really ambitious programmes within there, sort of building on the success of some of the big schemes that we've had, whether that's the enterprise zone, but really reimagining the city centre Centre, and particularly trying to drive forward the key themes of around Route to Zero, the climate change challenge which we have, and also delivering more inclusive growth and sort of linking the success that we've had within the city centre into some of those more suburban areas where we've got some real challenges still in terms of deprivation and unemployment. So Perry Barr is very much part of that in the linkages from the Perry Barr regeneration and how we can connect that back into the city core is very important. And the public transport improvements we've seen there is something that we'll be looking to mirror in other parts of East Birmingham, where we've got some real challenges there around deprivation and unemployment. And what we want to try and do is obviously get the benefits of the growth of the city centre into some of those more harder to reach areas.
Thanks, Ian. Just moving on to my last slide, and then we'll have the opportunity for some questions. I was thinking in preparing for this, I was thinking about, well, what have we changed or done differently as a directorate as a result of working on the games? And I think there are some things that are relevant not just for inclusive growth actually, but for colleagues I speak to across the council. Birmingham's always delivered on a significant scale, so projects of this scale are not new to us, but perhaps delivering all of these projects all at once on this scale has presented challenges, understandably. So we have really upped our game, I think, in terms of our project management capacity and capability, and really cementing a strong governance and a governance approach that really helps us to manage these projects effectively, and that learning has benefited other projects and programmes as well. Alongside that, and as part of that, there's been a lot of opportunities for BCC officers to develop and fulfil more challenging roles, which I think is only a positive for the directorate and for the council as a whole in the future. It's pushed us to think about our partnerships and our stakeholder relationships, and to really work at those and make sure that we're working with the right people at the right times, and speaking to working closely with our colleagues in other organisations. And I think particularly from the Perry Barr example, our approaches to community engagement, we've done some things better than others, and we all know that, and there's always opportunities to learn more. So I think there's a lot we've taken out of what we've done over the last couple of years that can help the council as a whole engage better with our communities. Ian, I think you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I agree with everything Becky said there about the learning for the team. This was the largest housing development in terms of direct delivery that we've taken on within the city. But there's certainly been a lot of learning and development in terms of the capacity around some of these bigger projects that we need to put in place, but also on the site itself. And I think if you go to Perry Barr, you'll see various different methods of construction actually being used in the development alongside each other. So two of the plots are using modern methods of construction. Those have brought a lot of benefits actually that we can learn from in terms of BMHT going forwards, with all of the bathroom pods have been manufactured off site, brought in as a completed product and sort of slotted into each apartment, and that has worked very, very successfully, certainly compared to the traditional method of them being fitted on site or one at a time, with the obviously a more sort of localized workforce at the scheme. So there's been a lot of benefits there that we can learn from, and we're keen to really get those lessons picked up through the BMHT programme going forward.
Okay, I think that probably brings us to the end of the presentation. So I'll hand back over to you, Chair, and Ian and I can take questions.
Thank you. Thank you both, Rebecca and Ian, for your presentation. There was a lot of detail in there, and I am going to just pause for a moment to say, to ask members to see if they can indicate for any questions that they may have. I've got a list of questions as well, but I'll just pause to see if any members want to raise anything. Otherwise, I'll go with a few questions that I've got, and I can pick up any questions from them. Okay, Councillor Straker-Wells, I'll hand over to you first, and I'll go afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You know, considering what we've been through, there's so much going on in terms of building infrastructure, transport, and so on. And I'm great to hear there's a master plan to make sure that all the jigsaw pieces are assembled and fit the right picture. And I'm presuming that, Ian, you and your department are responsible for synchronizing and sequencing the activities and for a timetable. I don't know if you can tell us a bit more about that. Although I do understand what's been said about it, the 20-year timescale. When we last looked at resilience with Rob James, he confirmed there are plans to ensure that we're ready for any eventuality. That's in terms of transport, traffic flow, roadworks, building development, access for emergency vehicles, invasion from outer space, anything at all. So that would be my second question. Presumably, all the building that's going on is also going to be cushioned against any possible developments involving, dare I say, British Gas, Severn Trent, or whoever wants to dig up a bit of road. The last question was really around gaps in the supply chain, which, you know, we've had an awful lot of publicity about. So I don't know whether, in fact, the buildings have been affected by all the difficulties that we currently have. But just before I lob those questions at you, I'm just saying it's great to hear about the social value commitment and the benefits to local population. Great to hear about the 35% affordable housing. Great to hear about the arts and cultural life being one of the central planks for regeneration. And great to hear that these schemes are a catalyst for inward investment as well, both national and international. So to be quite honest with you, it really does sound quite extraordinary. So thank you, Chair. I'll pause there.
Just in terms of the immediate sort of response to that, in terms of delivery, Becky and the team are very much now working on the next phases of the regeneration project. So we've got some plots there which we can bring forward fairly quickly now for family housing, plots 3, 4 and 5, which are immediately adjacent to the apartments that we've got on site. And then it's really looking forward then to phase 2 and the delivery of the 600 homes where we've got planning consent for there. So the focus then will turn on to working that outline application into a more detailed scheme that will come through to planning committee in due course. But certainly the intention is really to crack on with the project now. We need to keep the momentum going now with the next phases of the development. We've got some good discussions going on with Homes England around the site as well. In terms of resilience, certainly in terms of the highway schemes which are critical to the Commonwealth Games, are all very much on track and heading for completion well in advance of the games themselves. And Transport West Midlands obviously leading on the station redevelopments of Perry Barr and University. And again, both of those programmes, are making good progress for their delivery dates, and they're regularly monitored through the Commonwealth Games structure which is in place there to check progress. Supply chain has definitely been an issue around some supplies, but again, the program team we've got in there is very much placed resilience and making sure the supply chain hasn't had a detrimental impact on development. So a lot of goods have been pre-ordered, and one of the big advantages of the modular construction is it's obviously reduced the stuff being manufactured off site and then being brought into the site. It's taken some of those supply issues away. So there's certainly some lessons there for us to learn in terms of, as I said, for bigger schemes moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, for responding to Councillor Straker-Wells' questions. I'm just going to pause for another moment to see if there's any other questions from members. Otherwise, I'll go in and ask you the questions that I had. Okay, so I echo the points that Councillor Straker-Wells raised in terms of there certainly does seem to be a lot going on, and I think it's it's a credit to the entire team to get everybody this far, especially given the circumstances that everybody faced in the last year or so. and hopefully, obviously, as we get closer to the games, the local residents of Perry Barr and across the city will start to physically see the positive changes that are due to be happening, especially around the sort of local Perry Barr area. I've got a couple of questions, so I'll just give them all, I think, and then you can go through them. So when is the station due to be completed? And then in terms of the residential scheme, I'm hoping, I think I have asked this question previously, but as we're getting slightly closer, it's good to ask it again. In regards to the residential scheme, will it be sufficiently developed by games time so that it actually looks impressive for visitors who will be attending the games and not look anything at all like a building site or something that's still under construction? In relation to sort of jobs creation or skills and training, can you give us any sort of indication of any of that's been created as a result of games related Perry Barr development? And I know that Councillor Straker-Wells mentioned made reference to the 35% affordable housing. I'm just wondering how far off that commitment of the 35% affordable housing are we currently in Perry Barr? And on one of the slides, there was a point around the pop-up plot, and there was a brief reference to local businesses being able to hopefully get involved and to obviously maybe rent or have some sort of access to those pop-up plots during that time. I was just wondering how, as elected members, would we be able to signpost or steer any local businesses that we're aware of, or any businesses in our ward, so that maximum benefit can go to Birmingham businesses? So maybe you can give a bit of indication on that. And finally, whilst you were giving your presentation, almost on every single slide, I sort of took a step back and thought, I wish this was happening in my ward. Everything is fantastic, and I'm pretty sure most councillors across the city will be thinking that the developments that Perry Barr will be going under during games time, and hope obviously afterwards as well. We wish that this was happening in our patch. So in terms of turning that into a question, it's wonderful news for Perry Barr, and obviously you've made reference to things sort of in the city centre and the Smithfield development site, but how is inclusive growth ensuring the economic legacy for those other areas who aren't hosting venues? That's all of my questions. So I'll hand over to either Becky or Ian, whoever wants to take those. Thank you.
That's great. We've done this start, and then I'll bring Becky in on some of the remaining questions. So in terms of the look of the development, if you've been outside now, you'll see that the facades of most of the buildings now are coming together. So in terms of the look of it as being a completed building project, certainly by the time of the games themselves, all the external works of them will be complete, and we'll be really focusing on the internal sort of fit out then and moving in with the legacy proposals. So, and I know, Becky, I think the discussion has been around trying to get the hoardings down as well for games time, if I remember rightly, and I think the hope is that we could get the hoardings down for the games.
Yeah, that's right. From the outside at games time, they will look, the buildings that are up will look finished. We're trying to figure out where we can remove hoardings, or if there are places where we aren't able to, how we best align the hoardings so that you get the best view of the development. Obviously, it's a really good opportunity for us to start selling properties as well. So there's lots of reasons why it's absolutely the right thing to do to make them look as good as possible for games time.
Absolutely. So that's a discussions which we have continuing with the OC, and obviously the intention is to try and as Becky said, maximize the visual aspect as much as possible, and the aim is to get the marketing suite obviously open for the game, so it's a great opportunity to promote the site and really make the maximum benefit from it. So and I think in answer to your question there around the where businesses or future occupiers could come, we're putting in place a sales team now to take take that next step forward in terms of the deliverability of the site. So on plot 10, we'll have a marketing suite there where people can see a show apartment and see what some of the wider opportunities are within the areas. So there'll be a conduit through there for people to contact us.
Yeah, and just on the plot 10 point as well, Councillor, you asked about sort of the pop-up opportunities. We're expecting tenders or bids back from various organisations by I think it's the middle of next week. And what we've asked actually is that they present to us an innovative approach as to how they engage with or how they attract and support local businesses to locate there. So I'm not going to try and sort of give you a specific description of how that will work yet. I want to see what our bidders are proposing to offer, and that's a significant element alongside other things in terms of the design and operational model, but the opportunity for local businesses to locate into the site and the method for engaging with them is a significant element of our assessment of those tenders.
That's great, thanks, Becky. And then in terms of affordable housing, we've got a commitment to deliver, I think it's 22%, isn't there, Becky, for phase 1? With phase 2 then committing to the 35% affordable housing, but we're in discussions with Homes England and a bid for first home funding within phase 1 as well, which will help us to provide some additional affordable housing or discounted sales through that first homes programme. So that's something that Becky's led on and submitted that bid into Homes England.
Yeah,
I think that's a great opportunity, Becky, isn't it, to get some more affordable properties there. Successful,
and we're able to include the first homes element as well, that relates to the number I used in the presentation of circa 400. I've forgotten now whether it's 399 or 402 or something like that. I haven't got the number written down handy, but around 400 of the homes that are currently on site would be affordable as per the NPPF description of affordable. And actually having that range of tenures is really important because that's what gives you the best mix of community.
Thanks, Becky. And then the wider economic benefits across the city. I mean, obviously, you'll be aware Inclusive Growth are leading a number of development schemes on a city-wide basis. So I mean, to give you a sort of flavour of that, Councillor, we've obviously got we're taking through procurement currently the Ladywood Estate Regeneration project, which we're hoping to report to Council on that in the new year. That would involve the regeneration of the whole Ladywood area with a pretty significant scheme of circa 6,000 additional homes. We have the East Birmingham Inclusive Growth Strategy, which seeks to maximise a number of development opportunities within the East Birmingham corridor to major employment sites at Birmingham Wheels, the Washwood Heath site, which is in the control of HS2, Yardley Brook sewage works within that corner, that's that area of the city which we're bringing forward for residential developments, and continuing proposals at the Meadway for a new local centre there. To the south of the city, we have Longbridge, obviously, where we continue to work with MG, the former MG Rover site, and St Modwyn's there in terms of their regeneration aspirations there, which have delivered significant new homes and jobs to that part of the city. We have the Life Sciences campus coming forward at Selly Oak, which is another great opportunity. And then in the north of the city, we have major proposals at Langley for nearly 6,000 new homes through the Birmingham Development Plan, and Peddymore now, which is on site and will eventually deliver nearly 10,000 homes through that development. Becky's also working on a number of schemes in terms of local centre programmes. For example, we've got some schemes coming forward in Sutton Coldfield with the Red Rose Shopping Centre there, which will kickstart some regeneration in that part of the city, and a number of other smaller regeneration programmes within local centres as well. So as well as the Future City Plan and the city centre, the team are very much promoting a number of major regen programmes, across the city as a whole, which we hope will deliver some of the benefits that you're seeing in Perry Barr elsewhere. In terms of the station timeline, which I think was the other question, I think, Becky, they're looking at getting towards completion. Is it March, April next year?
Yeah. So I just was checking this, hence I went very quiet for a moment. I was trying to find the latest update. The practical completion is March, but the operational, or it will be operational again from late April, early May, looking at the timetable that was last issued. So I think in terms of having an operational station, May, but the build itself will be completed in March.
I think that's everything, Councillor Khan. If I've missed anything, feel free to come back.
Thank you. I don't think that you have missed anything, but I just wanted to add that thanks, Becky, for the reassurance that the question will at least be asked around the businesses for the pop-ups. I understand obviously you won't be able to go into any sort of further detail, but at least it gives some sort of reassurance that that at least the questions are being asked on behalf of local businesses. So that is definitely one.
It's key to what we envisage happening there. I don't think we'd be looking to work with anyone who couldn't offer a really good opportunity. We've stated it in the brief, so anyone who doesn't come back with something positive for local businesses is going to be scoring quite poorly. Thank you.
And Ian, obviously it was brilliant to hear a summary of all of the different projects that are in place around the city, that obviously inclusive growth are leading on with all the different developments that you've mentioned. But I feel like my question still stands in terms of more of a post-games legacy, economic legacy that other parts of the city that don't have venues for the games may be benefiting from. I know that some of the developments that you referred to perhaps maybe have been accelerated due to games coming, but it was just if there's anything that's directly linked to games, that would have been good to find out about, or to know if there are any other plans, or in fact you can maybe comment on if I am right in thinking that at least those other developments are perhaps being accelerated due to games, and therefore that can be a legacy of having games in other, or of having legacy benefits in other parts of the city.
Yeah, and that's it's a good question, and I think obviously we touched in the presentation there about aspects like University Station, which connect and very much support the life sciences proposals in Selly Oak, and obviously that has been a scheme which has been very much pushed because of the university being used as a venue for the Commonwealth Games itself. So you've seen some of these infrastructure proposals being, and Becky touched on others in terms of public realm and transport improvements, which are all happening pre-game. So there's definitely been a sort of, and inevitably some of those aspects like the University Station will very much support wider developments in that part of the city, whether that's the life sciences campus, which the university are bringing forward with Bruntwood. So the games will definitely has that legacy in terms of accelerating infrastructure and then supporting wider economic aspirations there. Hopefully what to say is through the business tourism and investment strategy, the program for attracting more investment into Birmingham as well, on the back of the games, which we're working with Bays and the West Midlands Combined Authority and the Growth Company and other partners on, will also bring more investment into Birmingham as a whole. So that program is very much intended to make sure we maximise that economic opportunity for the city as well. And both Craig Cooper and myself sit on that board in terms of we make sure we'll really try and maximise that legacy for the city overall.
You're on mute, Chair.
Apologies. Sorry, thank you. Anyway, what I was saying was thank you so much to both Ian and Becky for attending the meeting, giving us your presentation and answering the questions. There's obviously lots of work that's being done and it's really exciting, and hopefully we will be in the very near future arranging that visit to have a look at the regeneration scheme and possibly the school as well. So thank you for coming once again, and I can now move on to the next agenda item. thank you so much, Kevin, for waiting patiently, and apologies again that we had to rejig the order, and sorry that it's 2:30 and this is the time that you'd originally said that you had to leave by. So apologies, and thank you for saying that you would be able to stay given what's happened. So members, this would have been agenda item 4. This is an item from Kevin Crompton on the Education and Skills Directorate. So I'll hand over to you, Kevin.
Yes, Kerry, please.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, Kerry, just ask your question.
Thank you.
Perfect. It's the same again. I'll hand over to you and then we'll take questions at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll do a presentation. It comes up. There we go. Okie doke. Okay, thank you. So short presentation, I've got some verbal updates. So I think, as the college has just said, trying to use the Commonwealth Games to inspire and engage thousands of children and young people, leave a legacy, is a clear ambition of the city. And it's quite interesting. I was a London chief exec when we were preparing for the Olympics, and similarly, you know, trying to make sure that your communities benefited from such events can be quite the challenge. But there's lots of things we can do with schools. There's going to be a games learning programme, trying to use the assets of the games and the cultural events to connect Birmingham's young people directly with opportunities to gain skills, growing confidence, become part of a stronger and more cohesive community. Now, we've got a contribution from the city of £500,000 funding to support a targeted strand of activity, seeking to ensure that young people in every ward of the city have access to at least one games opportunity, either through school or community participation. There's been a slight delay in the programme, in the sense that originally we were told the DFE was going to fund a national programme around schools involving the development of curriculum materials and so on. And this money was held over the summer to match fund some of that, but we understand that isn't going to happen now. So the meetings of the Commonwealth Games, the Education Steering Group, chaired by Councillor Francis, resolved a month, sorry? Anyway, met and recently the decision has been made to use that money, and I'll tell you how the city hopes to use it. So some of what I'm going to talk to you about is things that are happening now, and some of it's going to be the aspiration. I think you'll see activity, particularly around schools, accelerate as we get to the end of this term and into next. So the subcommittee is focusing on 3 themes. The journey to the games, so things like following the baton as it comes around the Commonwealth countries, finding common ground, which is about tackling the legacy of colonialism, taking on some of the issues arise from the Black Lives Matter campaign and so on in our schools, and the We Can Change the World theme, and across 5 areas. Trying to ensure Birmingham children and young people benefit from priority access to key games opportunities, deepening engagement and impact to reach as many young people and schools as possible, investing in resources and activity that tackles the legacy of colonialism, priorities in work with young people who are not in employment, education, and training, or at risk of becoming a NEET. Really important that we get our young people into work, not particularly as the legacy of COVID is. They seem to have been hit harder, not just in Birmingham, but across the country. And aligning the work with some of the bigger priorities for children and young people in the city, being a child-friendly city, UNICEF rights, respecting schools, and reducing violence. Next slide, if I may. So the funding is going to be allocated across 3 work streams. The games assets, existing projects, and a learning programme. I'm going to give you some examples. So the games assets is about funding activity that deepens the engagement experience for schools, and through giving them access to some of the games assets, such as the mascot engagement workshops. And I would hope in due course, you know, we might be able to get some contact with some of the teams that are coming, and so on. So not just events, but also getting children involved in cultural events. So within this work stream, the funding is going to help develop educational resources that speak on the subject of the legacy of colonialism and enable schools to get young people in honest, age-appropriate conversations about place and identity and history of communities. In the engagement workshops is about face-to-face physical workshops incorporating sport and creative arts to try and help young people get a deeper engagement and links to the games, the cultural festival, the games themselves, the opening and closing ceremonies, the Queen's Baton relay. Funding to enable children from schools and children from youth clubs and so on to visit the games, to visit the cultural festivals and performances. And of course, Perry, the mascot, visiting schools. And I think he's already got, or she, I don't know, be a gender neutral mascot, is visiting schools. I think last I heard there's about 200 already signed up. And in fact, it's getting close to the point where applications for a visit are going to get difficult to answer because there's such excitement about getting the mascot to visit. So that's the sort of thing that under the Games Assets programme. Can we stay on that slide, please? Got 2 more to do, Kerry, then we'll go to that last slide. So then there's work to enhance some of the existing projects. So the organising committee is working with young people as part of the youth panel. And they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but work with established groups in the city. And the sort of thing they're working on with the young people is how they will start their journey and be part of the Queen's Baton Relay event that's launched in Buckingham Palace in October, and attend other engagement activity with the organising committee over every month. So using the Youth City Board rather than having a separate, sorry, Kerry, yes, trigger happy finger. And again, so working with the Youth City Board, constantly talking to young people about how they can use the games to promote things and get engaged. Through the youth service, all 16 youth centres intend to become a local community focal point for the games, aligned with the youth programme engagement programme. They'll be having relevant branding material, banners, posters, t-shirts, countdown clock, flagpoles, etc. Again, getting young people to understand that this is a games that they can be involved in and feeling that the games is very much for them as well as for others. Multi-art form performance workshops and concerts. So there's going to be creative engagement workshops involving the youth centres, leading to some live performance sharing at a legacy centre for excellence in December 21. I think that's a concert to launch the Commonwealth year. And so there's some activity there. There's a project to reclaim Burberry Park, which you may know more of the history about than I, but it's about using the concept of a public health approach to reduce youth violence and using themes from the Commonwealth Games to reclaim the park in one of Birmingham's hotspots for youth violence and gang grooming. So they're going to use youth work principles and practice to get into the park, to work with young people and to try to get those young people away from the youth violence and the gangs and getting involved in sport. We'll take guest coaches there, mentoring Commonwealth, talking about Commonwealth sport, getting young people to re-engage in their local green space. It'd be great to see some of the things like I saw yesterday, the video on adult services where we've got, we're involving adults in sports in the park, tennis and so on. It'd be good to take a leaf at that, but get some activities. There's going to be an intercity basketball skills challenge. And this is going to use the all-city basketball skills circuit to have testing and grading players, skills abilities 1 to 5. And the aim is to find the 5 top skilled players in the city and the most skilled player in the city that has improved their technical ability over the years. That's another avenue. There's an offer to all 16 youth centres to get involved in a workshop activity across 6 weeks led by sports practitioners, artists and inspirational visitors, which will take the theme of the games, and that can be about a country, about a sport at the game and so on. There's a project that's going to look at music from Commonwealth countries, again in the youth centres. getting your people engaged in video workshops, short films that could be about fashion, could be about music, again with the focus on coming from the Commonwealth countries. Some collaborative arts and project display, and most probably very important is the continued focus on a programme of work working with young people who are at risk of becoming NEET, and working with those who are NEET, using the career service, using the youth service, using whatever we can to give them a pathway back into work. In education, some of the existing work is to build on the anti-racist practice, the curriculum work that's already been done in Birmingham schools. There's an associate schools programme, a group of head teachers and deputy heads who are working on what might the school learning office for children and young people look like, and this is aiming to come to fruition this term with a view of getting a lot more activity in the schools next term. And there'll be a grants open call for pots of funding to be delivered in 3 rounds, inviting people to put forward their proposals for activities they think will help celebrate with young people, children, young people, the Commonwealth Games. And that's the open programme. So I've not got the date when that starts unless it's in an update. Could you want to go to the last slide, please? And it is the last slide because for some reason we've got this one twice. In terms of employability skills, this is the update I've been given that in terms of construction opportunities, especially at Perry Barr, so far 312 jobs, 78% of target from 400 jobs in construction, 57 apprenticeships, nearly 5,250 young people engaged through school linkages with that scheme, and over 1,600 volunteer hours. Linking to the Gains Work Experience programme with a focus on 17 roles as part of the NEET programme. And we're supporting the volunteers programme through the Birmingham Adult Education Service, community libraries and the Library of Birmingham. I'm just going to give some quick updates from the last steering group. So 5 new team members to join the Learning Youth programme have been funded by the organisation committee, and they are being recruited, I think, now. There's going to be a lot of work through the end of term promoting communications to schools, which, you know, posters, promotions, encouragement to get schools involved. The youth volunteer programme continues. There's the initial mapping done. There's 550 games roles for 14 to 17 year olds. 10 sports have confirmed they'll need volunteers, and there's applications were taken in September. And in January, February, there'll be training days at the library. We will seek to advise on how we can make our programme accessible to those with special education needs and disabilities as part of the work. So over the next 6 months, we're expecting the Youth Volunteers programme, as I said, looking at programme activity and getting schools signed up from January onwards to participate in engagement activity. The education resources will be launched towards the end of term, and again, we'll get work involved. There are up to 50 schools already engaged in the Pathway to the Podium project, which I think is following the baton around the world, which is really good. Civic History project, 15 schools have volunteered to put programmes together, and 5 of those are already engaged with the anti-racism work with the University of Birmingham. Razia Butt, a colleague, is picking up that work, and we hope to get more schools involved in the Civic History project. And finally, Chair, through the Birmingham Education Partnership, we're continuing to do our work, and 180 schools applied to be Commonwealth Connections, which is they do a project and link with another Commonwealth country. 180 applied, and 60 schools have signed up in 10 clusters. 5 across Birmingham, 5 clusters across the combined authority area, and they're linking with 10 countries across the Commonwealth. And it was announced on Monday at the BEP conference that the schools have now been accepted into the programme, and they've been getting their letters to tell them they are involved. That's where I'll stop, Chair, and take questions, if I may. I'm sure it's brief. My tenure here is much dominated by the SEND agenda, but my colleagues are working on the Commonwealth Games, are excited by what's happening, and trying to encourage our schools and our young people to be involved and get a lot from it.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for your presentation. And there's some really exciting things that you've described within that presentation. I'm really pleased to hear about them. As always, I will check with members, and I haven't had an indication from Councillor Straker-Wells, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. But I just knew you were going. I just knew that was coming. So I will hand over to Councillor Straker-Wells.
And I will do my best. And if I can't answer, I will make sure there's a written question within days, a written answer within days.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Obviously, we can appreciate that there are other matters that you're having to deal with at the same time. So we do understand that. Thank you.
Yeah. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues who could help, they're on leave or elsewhere engaged today, Chair. But I would hope you would ask us back in later in the year, and we can tell you how far we've got. Yep. Councillor Straker-Wells, how are you?
Hi, Kevin. Not bad. Doing my best. It's never going to be good enough. First of all, two things that raise my spirits. One is about the involvement of youth services and schools in the creative festival that will be running alongside the Commonwealth Games. To me, that is not quite as important, but almost as important as the Games itself, because apart from anything else, the presence of creative arts in schools has not always been a happy one, and certainly it's been under challenge. The other thing that I enjoyed was to hear that the Games are going to be a celebration of linguistic and cultural diversity rather than a hangover from empire. As a product of the Commonwealth myself, I'm delighted to hear that. I'm delighted to hear that it will also be an experience, a learning experience for children in schools. But the two specific questions I have, I mean, the Education Steering Group, you told us a little bit about it and how you're networking with schools and so on, but I just wanted to know who it consisted of, how they reach out to schools, and how our committee can be kept in touch with its activities. Because, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm really interested in what happens in schools with this. I think it's an incredible potential learning experience. And then the second question is, you mentioned your experience in London, and I wanted to pick your brains really on the post-Games legacy benefits that you have direct experience of, and how that could help the schools to maintain the momentum of, you know, the experience itself, but also their own learning afterwards.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Fine. So, Councillor, can I send you the membership? I'll send it to the committee, the membership. Certainly, Jane Francis chairs it. The colleagues from the organising committee are there, but I haven't got the full list to hand, and it's not a meeting. I've only attended it once. So may I send you the thing? But Jane, Councillor Francis set it up quite deliberately to make sure there was a handle on this work, that it would have momentum, and indeed it's proving to be a really good place for us to discuss ideas. The second question is a little more difficult. I did have a chat with CLT colleagues, the corporate leadership colleagues, about this. The only thing about the legacy of the Olympics in London is that the benefit was in direct proportion to your proximity to the Games. So I think the biggest legacy, particularly physical legacy, was in Newham, and then probably Hackney. But when you got up to where I was at Haringey, there was no physical legacy, for example, in terms of regeneration, because that had all gone around the Olympic Park and so forth. We did get a new road to Alexander Palace because they were worried that when they ran the torch around there that somebody might trip up. So we managed to get a new road to Alexander Palace. And during the Games, we had one of the cultural centres, the Dutch house came to Alexander Palace, which was great. So work continued in the schools. I think probably the most obvious legacy, I think it did give a real boost to participation in sport, both young people and adults. And, you know, that's something that I think gets reawakened when any of these big events happens anywhere in the country. But London did experience that. But beyond that, and I've said, I think it really made me think when I was asked here, should the legacy of the Commonwealth Games be for the people of Birmingham? I'm really thinking on that. Now, I suppose here, I'm seeing this work done on civic history, the history of the Commonwealth, all that. I don't recall that sort of project being done in Haringey at the time of the games. So that would be a legacy. So we'd hope we wouldn't do it with just one generation of children. We would continue with that work and continue to celebrate the diversity and the history of the Commonwealth and how we all fit in it beyond. That's what I would hope. But then, as Ian said, the other legacy is to take the momentum, isn't it, from the pathways into employment that we need to create to ensure the games runs efficiently and so on, and continue those things in the future with the other regeneration things. So there's more of our young people getting into work. I think that's what I'd say to that, Councillor.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll pause for a quick moment to see if there's any other indications from members, but otherwise I'll continue then. So like I said earlier, before Councillor Straker-Welds, Councillor Azim, are you on? Councillor Azim, do you want to mute? Unless.
Oh yeah.
There we are.
Thanks.
Okay, just so there isn't any interference. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, Kevin. So like I sort of said earlier before I handed over to Councillor Straker-Welds, that a lot of the things that you've described are really positive, and I don't mean to bring any sort of downer on it, but I will ask the question. You know, it does sound really positive, but can you reassure me that it isn't too little too late for the education stream? Only because when we previously asked colleagues about the progress on this strand earlier, nothing had seemed to have been done at that time, and I know that the changes of senior leadership wouldn't have helped. So it's just a sort of question in terms of, I know we've got lots of exciting projects, lots of good initiatives, lots of things that, you know, we'll sort of comment on later on, but just overall, how do you feel that it's sort of come together?
Yeah, and I'm not going to be critical of colleagues here. Whether it's too little, I don't know. 500,000 is quite a substantial pot to do something. I bet I could line up several head teachers to tell you that we ought to put 3 times as much in, but 500,000 is quite a useful pot. I think you're right, Councillor. I think we need to increase pace, and the thing that I spent a lot of time chasing in my first few months with Lisa Fraser was, what were we doing with the 500,000? What were we doing with that? And as I say, at that time, it was being held against this promise there was going to be at least as much money coming out of the DFE, and the 2 pots would be put together. I think that caused some delay, which led to me and Elise Fraser and Councillor Francis, and then having some meetings with the Commonwealth Games team, at which we said, no, we have to release this money now. We can't wait. So the too late thing, it isn't too late, but we do need to move at a pace now to make sure that we can hit the ground running as we approach 2022. And that's why I think it would be useful to invite colleagues back a little later in the year to see if all the now planned work with schools has come to fruition in the way we hope it will. Okay, so I think that definitely sort of keeping an eye on how things go in the future in the near future would be important. Okay, another question I've got, hopefully you should be able to help with this. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the relationship, or what the relationship is with other delivery partners on the education strand, just so that I have a better understanding and maybe elected members can understand as well, because obviously we can see the council's role and then obviously the schools, the money comes from here. So just to try and understand the different dynamics and the different relationships, just so that we know who's responsible for delivering what aspects and what sort of roles everybody currently plays. Does that make sense? It does, yeah. So the most obvious other partner is the Birmingham Education Partnership, because of their links with schools. And I think, as I said, they're already generating, they're already working on the Connections project, and they are continuing to work on other ideas. So we will be using them to help us get programs when they're designed up and running in the schools. So they're the most obvious development partner. So, and then, well, the other interfaces are with the youth service, the youth employment project in particular, which is a DWP funded project, so Department of Work and Pensions. So they're on board. And of course, officers will work across the council in terms of links with Ian's inclusive growth agenda and so on. Did you have, I guess the missing link for me, but there's a lot of voluntary sector engagement, isn't there, in the cultural programme that's already been out, and funding has already been distributed for that, is my understanding. So we're engaging with the head teachers through BEP and through other volunteers and so on. Is there any other partner you're thinking of? I'm probably being very insular today. It's been one of those days.
No, it's fine. It's just, I mean, to get a bit of an understanding in terms of obviously the DfE's role. The DfE. So I've not spoken to the DfE about this. I think colleagues have, because basically, as far as I understand it, there was this idea it was going to match fund a programme across the country, and not atypical of the DfE sometimes, it seems to be an idea that just sort of died. So they're not actually taking a role as we stand. The LEP will be helping, and Combined Authorities helping obviously on the skills stuff. So most of the Birmingham players are involved. Okay.
And of course, I think the Commonwealth Games is a DCLG or whatever it's called now, the levelling Department for Levelling Up or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
So at my time of career, I get bemused by the capacity for government departments to change names, but stay the same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's I think that sort of answers it. It was just to try and to get an understanding in terms of the, who are the different people who will be involved in delivery aspects. I had a question around the Commonwealth connections. Am I right in thinking you said at the end that 5 across Birmingham, is that 5 schools across Birmingham have been accepted?
There are 60 schools signed up in 10 clusters.
Oh.
So that'll be, we can assume, doing maths, so 6 in each cluster. So 30 schools in Birmingham in 5 clusters, and similarly 30 schools in 5 clusters across the combined authority area. And they're linking with 10 countries, and please don't ask me to name the 10.
No, I'm not going to. I wasn't going to ask you to name the 10, but I was going to ask you to see if you can name the schools that we're talking about in Birmingham. Obviously, I know that you have
because I can get that information for you, because I say it was announced at the conference literally, where are we, Wednesday, on Monday afternoon. So I'll get you the names of the schools, the names of the connector schools, not a problem.
Yeah, no, that would be good, I think, for elected members to find out if there are any schools in their wards that will be involved in that project, and then maybe we can send that information out to elected members and they can get involved as well. The other thing was just a comment really on the employability and skills slide. Brilliant. It's good to see progress on that. It's good to see that there's 312 jobs created so far, around nearly 5,250 young people engaged through school links. So it was just useful to be able to have actual numbers, and hopefully I presume that those numbers will rise as time goes on in the coming months.
So the council's been working on a skills strategy, and that's going to be going through the corporate leadership team and then will up to cabinet in the next sort of 6 weeks or so, which is the bigger picture stuff about how do we sustain and extend the range of opportunities for jobs in the city. And there's a heavy focus on young people, because, as I say, we know they suffered through COVID, and we know if they're unemployed, some of them will inevitably get drawn into activities we'd rather they didn't, and it's safe for them and better for them if they don't.
That's good to hear. The only other sort of question I have, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, and I don't know whether you'd have the answer to this, because it's a vague memory that I have from very early on when we found out that we were going to have the games in the city, and in discussions around the education programme, there was a potential of a sort of qualification or something that might be built up, or maybe working with the universities and colleges and seeing if something can come of that will obviously impact in terms of legacy, but it was described as some form of qualification where young people can get onto a course, apply to. Do you recall any of that?
No, but I will ask people. I will ask people. I don't know. I don't have any information on that, but I will ask. I'd need to know, the context.
Where it came from and what. Yeah, no, I understand that. Which is why I said I might be putting you on the spot, but I just thought.
I don't mind being put on the spot as long as you don't mind having a written answer.
No, that's understandable. So we're more than happy for you to come back and do a bit of digging and find out. Councillor Straker-Wells, did you want to come in here?
And I know that Kevin's already been invited, as it were, to come back, and that's great to hear. But given the question that you raised about is it all too little too late, and the Commonwealth Games is galloping up. I mean, it's just going to be with us before we know where it is. Is there a newsletter, or is there some kind of bulletin that could help to keep our committee in touch with what's going on in schools? I do think that for me, I mean, certainly the learning experience, the opportunity for schools to get involved, the social cohesion element, the arts element, the cultural element, all of the things that we associate with children developing confidence, conviction, and becoming whole, rounded human beings. All of that is potentially at stake. I think you know what I mean, don't you? I'm not saying it very well, but
no, you're saying absolutely fine, Councillor. So I think in the update I've got, there is going to be an increase in activity and communication to schools. I'll find out what the medium is and inquire as to how councillors can similarly know that's happening. It's the sort of thing I would expect to go in the All Councillors newsletter, at least with links and so on. So I will get that back to you as well, see when it's going to start and what it consists of.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
Okay. Do you know, so thank you. I was going to say, adding on to that. If we're not
doing one, I'll ask them to do one, Councillor.
Thank you. No, I was going to say, adding on to that point, obviously for elected members, we obviously care about all the children across the city and all the young people in our city, but whenever we ask questions, usually elected members are slightly more interested in their own wards. I was just going to say that if given the scale of all the things that need to happen, and everything else that's going on, even if there was something to do with children in schools, even if it was anything to do with this sort of education programme in one place, we as elected members would be more than happy to sift through and find things that are relevant to our local areas and local schools. And if there are gaps, then we can then go and ask those questions. So I'm not, normally we always say to any directorates or anyone that comes in, can we have a ward by ward thing? But I'm not, I mean, I don't know what Councillor Straker-Wells sort of view on that is, but I'm not for a second expecting you or requesting for it to be a ward breakdown. Even if it's a citywide thing, I think that we can do our bit, nitpick, find, with your nods that, I think that you're nodding and you're agreeing with me. So it's just, if it doesn't exist, just so that we're not asking you to give us a bit of a huge mammoth task. It might just be a case of getting that information available to us so that we can then start to accelerate and get that the engagement and supporting our local schools and children and young people as well. That would be good. Thank you. I think that I don't have any other sort of questions. Thank you so much for coming, and again, thank you for coming and doing your presentation towards the end, and apologies that there was a mix-up and that you were looking for us face to face. Hopefully maybe next time we do have you back in, we will be back to face to face.
Of course, normally the arrogance of a senior officer, I should have sat in the room and waited for you to
waited for us all. So I'm grateful that you didn't, because we wouldn't have, unfortunately, you might still have been waiting. So
no, the issue was at our end. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll get this information to you. And of course, Sue Harrison, of course, will be here as director from November, and I will be briefing her, including on the Commonwealth Games and your interest in the work of the department, the directorate on that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks again for coming, and we hope to have the directorate back perhaps in a few months' time to hear a bit more about the progress.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I can move on now to the next agenda item, which is just the work programme. If members have got anything that they want to comment or have any questions on the work programme. If not, I can move on and I can give you a bit of an update under any other urgent business. Are we okay to do that? I take that as a yes. Date of the next meeting is the 3rd of November at 1:30. That's just a note. And then under any other urgent business, it's just to inform/remind members that the visit to Alexander Stadium will take place on the 22nd of October, and members should have received an email already for this. So just if you haven't already responded, please do respond. I know that numbers are limited on this visit, but we are looking to arrange another visit to have a look at the regeneration around Perry Barr, and hopefully tie in for a visit at the school for that visit as well. So at the November meeting, Becky Hillard from the Council Management Directorate and Dr. Peter Bishop from Digital and Customer Services Directorate and Paul Lancaster will be coming to talk about public health. So that's what we've got scheduled for November. The rest of the dates that we've got in our work programme, if members want to hear back from anybody that we've had so far, or anyone else that you'd like to find out further information about, then you can drop me an email if you don't want to sort of comment right now at this meeting. And we just need to firm up and get those in our diary or in our work programme. I know that we've had some people in the past few months who we did say we will hope to get them back. So I'll have a look to see how long it's been for some of those, and then have a look and check to see what members think about having them back at our future meetings post November. If that's okay with members, unless anyone's got any questions or comments on that. Nope. And just as a final sort of point, just to make members aware, I have joined the organising committee's Legacy and Benefits Committee, which I'm hoping will help link this scrutiny committee a bit more directly with the Legacy and Benefits Committee from the organising committee. I attended one meeting last month. I think the next one's scheduled for November, and obviously that was my first meeting that I'd attended. So outside of this meeting, I'm happy to have any conversations with members to give you an idea of the sort of things that's discussed in the OLC's Legacy and Benefits Committee, and then we can build on any sort of conversations of how we get some more support from them in terms of the work that we're doing. But this was just to let members know that I am sitting on that committee as well now. I don't have anything else to add. If members don't have any questions or comments, then I'm happy to end this meeting here, but I will wait because Councillor Jan is typing something. I'm happy for you to speak. You can just turn your mic and camera on if you'd like to, if it's quicker.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Chair. No, I've got nothing to add for the first time.
Oh, okay, thank you. No, I saw you were typing. That's why I wasn't sure if you had something to say, but that's fine. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for attending. And just finally, sorry, Daniel, I know that you've been in attendance, and I apologies I didn't get a chance to welcome you at the beginning of the meeting. I hope you enjoyed that meeting, and I know that you'll be at our future meetings, I believe. For members that aren't aware, Daniel has joined I've put you on the spot. Sorry, I didn't mean to. You didn't need to. You can introduce
fine.
yourself, actually. I'm happy for you to do that.
Yeah, hi there, I'm Dan King. I'm one of the recently started graduates on the NGDP programme, and I'll be working in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's been great to come along to this meeting, and thank you very much, Councillor, for giving me a little introduction.
That's fine. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot at all. It was just,
Fine, don't
I know
worry.
you've been there, but because we obviously had to run through the agenda and hope that we get both items in, I just thought I'd give you a bit of a wave and say, hi, I know that you're here, and, you know, I hope that you enjoy your time, you know, doing your work on the ONS committees.
No,
Great, thank you. Thanks, members, for attending, and I'm happy for the meeting to end here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.